Okay, hi Miti. Thank you so much for joining us today on another episode of A Studio of One's Own. So this is actually a weekly online dialogue session that seeks to reach out to various artists from quiet corners of the world and to catch up with them on their creative and changing creative routines now that they've been confined to their home space. So Miti Ruangkritya he's a Thai artist, a Thai contemporary visual artist, and his work focuses on issues or topics surrounding his life. And in particular, he looks at the city surfacing as a dominant subject, and he studies its environments and the people and its transformation and growth. So before we begin, I just want to ask, how are you doing this quarantine, and how has your day-to-day routines changed?
Hello, hi everyone. Um, Actually, the lockdown, I think at first it has been um, quite an anxious early period, but I think for everyone we felt the same, just because that we didn't really know, how long it was gonna be, and or how severe it will get. So I think like everyone, I was in a bit of an anxious mode and not being able to get anywhere. Yeah, it was quite a depressing, worrying period. But
Mm.
but then, I think like a lot of people, we found way to adapt. And for me, I went out to the city more. So during the early stage of lockdown, I was staying in Bangkok, and I ended up walking and exploring the city more than any time in my in my life in living in Bangkok, just because there's less traffic and less pollution. So the cities actually has transformed into, if it's a person, it's, if you think of Bangkok as a loud kind of fun person, suddenly it's turned into this a quiet introvert kind of person, a landscape where you could where you're allowed and able to walk through more of the pavements and alleys. So it's been a in that sense, it's been a great experience in seeing the city from another perspective. Just because like all these traces that you don't usually see in a city, sort of appear when when the traffic's gone, when the street side stall has disappeared. So you sort of see more of homeless people, or these sort of traces that sort of disappear just because they're more visible now in the city landscape, or maybe because it's because I was walking more and I was exploring more. I wasn't just rushing from A to B, compared to my usual daily life in Bangkok, where it's so busy and polluted. And I mean, and apart from that, I just feel appreciated enough that I'm not in trouble compared to a lot of people who might be running small or medium-sized businesses, or even a lot of freelancer. You
Yeah.
Let's say from massage, just basic kind of job like massage people. They have to go back to the countryside, and yeah, I mean a lot of people just suddenly just have no job. So that's that's horrible.
Mm-hmm.
But for in creative term wise for myself, it's been great to reflect on and to see a different side of the city.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's interesting when you mentioned about landscapes in your work, Miti, because it's when I visited your websites, there's actually there are many instances you are out on the street documenting the city in the quiet of the night, and for example, the works are imagining floods, whereby where the whole cities come to a standstill. But yet, this imagining floods also bring out this this kind of uncertainty about what goes beyond the image or what goes beyond the landscape. It actually comes across to me transferring this sort of like this mental situation or the mentality of the city, not just a road sign, or but it almost gave me this feelings that the city or the country is undergoing tremendous stress too, even though it's so quiet. Yeah. So and when I visited also your Instagram, it also comes across like this quiet destitute landscapes appearing again, and and also the other works that which is referring to this used block in Bangkok. Is it still there? Yeah, whereby you photograph the sunset series.
Oh, yes. So that's the Sunset series that was exhibited in at SIPF, right? Yes. That was called that's called Saturn Sunset. So that's the first series of the uh, a three-part trilogy that I have been planning to make on the city, relating to social, economical, and political issue in Thailand.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when you mentioned city is very much part of your work, and
Mm.
this observation of city, and I recall that you mentioned that there's a one big part of your life that was spent in living in UK and returning back to the city and trying to understand where you are returning to. Is this a search that's still ongoing for you? For say a young Thai looking at like the world around you, your immediate society, your immediate surrounding, your city that you're living in.
Yeah, I think for me, with because with my background of being in living and studying abroad for quite a long time, for a chunk part of my life, it was it for me coming back to Bangkok and living back in Thailand again. Um, it was quite an eye opening to see such a different flow and how the cityscape in developing country change so fast. So for me, that's I I think even without any kind of manipulation to the work, just by recording the things that's happening, the destruction or the creation, it's that's for me. It's already quite fascinating how how things change so fast, the speed of development, and obviously this is all linked to economical change and social change as well. And Saturn Sunset is one of the example, because the building that I shot the drone video and still image was it's like a ghost tower that's situated uh, in the middle of the city next to Chao Phraya River. So it's in a very good um, scenic location down the end of the financial road, the Saturn Road, and the construction stopped right at in 1997 due to the economic crisis. So and to this day it still stand. And like if you're traveling in Bangkok, there's not much chance that you will miss it. This tall skeletal like building made with thousand and thousand of Greco-Roman columns. And so for me it became a symbol of the economic boom and bust, this sort of cycle. And for the second project, I worked on a project called a convenient sunset, a convenient hold up. So it's the second part of the Sunset series that concentrated on the big corporation through the symbol of 7-Eleven. It's a convenience store that most of us, especially in Asia, we could find it all over the place. And right now I'm planning to work on the third edition of the series, and hopefully it will be on the concentrating on the landmark sort of high-rise building that has been created in Bangkok in recent years, because I think a lot of these buildings, with a lot of money and just a lot of you could see the intention or the ego of the investor wanting to make something that's stand out. So I mean, even when I was walking around the city this time without any sort of direct plan, if I ever get lost, I could look at one of the newer building built in the last few years, and I could know straight away why I am in the city. So for me, these sort of long-lasting, massive modern-day monument is really interesting. And but right now it's I'm in process of negotiating, of getting way to having access to go to the kind of rooftop. So that's also part of the work. So basically, for example, in Saturn Sunset, there's that permission kind of negotiation process taking place as well, to be able to get the main video shot that was taken on the top floor that would have been a sort of penthouse kind of exclusive floor with the river view of that you could see the whole city. And but also when you look at this perspective as well, it's being in the city these days, to be able to view the city from the high up, you either need to have money or the sort of privilege. So for example, to get to the top view of the city high in bars, you need to have a lot of money to pay crazy sort of price to enjoy that view, right, before you could Instagram it. So it's not like in the countryside where there's more of a kind of share public space where people could enjoy. So for me, that's also an interesting part of city development as well.
So yeah, like you talk a lot about like development in the city and this rapid pace of change and growth, but I think it's interesting because like this pandemic has forced all development to kind of um, end, and like what you said, Bangkok has suddenly become a very quiet space. And as someone who is an observer of the city, how do you see this pause on all economic activity or just development? Like, do you think it is good for the society in general? As an artist, how do you feel?
I think in general, this COVID-19 and lockdown in general, it's not great for for everyone, for the people involved. You know, as I said earlier, I mean, with a lot of businesses and everyone, you know, being in this uh, unpredictable time, it's really tough on, you know, especially people who has been investing. And with Thailand, you know, our economy rely a lot on tourist, you know, foreign cash, foreign money. It's yeah, I mean, it must be real tough. But I mean, hopefully, when I think every time when there's something this extreme, this kind of extreme situation, it it will force a lot of us, if we can survive, then it will force a lot of us to find a new way or more efficient way to you know to to carry on. So I mean, for as an artist or photographer, you know, maybe it's a good time to for, let's say, for myself, it has been a good time for me to reflect on looking back at my old work and kind of let it sit through more, because prior to this, you know, I might have commercial jobs to do, or you know, it's, you know, there's a lot more things going on. So and you basically just keeping up to the schedule, right? And just because now you basically you can't do anything, so you have to stop and buying be by being quiet and, you know, having more time to just walk or just look at your work. I think it's a great time to see where, you know, where which direction you want to head to, or yeah, I mean, what sort of work you want to develop next. So for me, in that sense, it has been a positive experience, you know, to have this kind of pause. Hmm. But obviously, economically, I think it's tough on everyone. Yeah.
That's true. I think it also forces you to bring the art making to the essence of art. I guess you really start to forget about the past. I mean, you really start to forget about the all the exhibitions that you have, or like the commission works, because you know you're really forced to just sit with you and your own previous art and look back into the archives, which I think is important as an artist. Um, but you know, as we transition into this new normal, there's also a lot of attention being brought to the online space as an art exhibiting space and a space for exploration. So I'm curious to know, since you know you're talking a lot about how you're using Instagram a lot more as a form of documentation, and you're using social media as a way to rediscover and re-represent your artwork. So as a media artist, how has that experience been, and do you think that this online space can potentially be a new trend that will endure for the art industry?
Yes, I think basically this COVID-19, you know, I have to say, without this lockdown issue, we wouldn't be speaking, because usually, you know, if I meet Gwen, it's usually like every 2 years or something we'll get to speak, and other than that, it just be a small notes. So I mean, even with this lockdown, it has already accelerate, you know, this you know, our usage of online. I think it's heading in that direction in a way, but with the thing that's happening now, it has moved the, you know, the way we communicate faster than it is. But I think that's for everything as well, you know, even in terms of how we live our life or something. I mean, since lockdown, I have been using more like, let's say, delivery apps and stuff like that. So I think it's on every level we are moving more towards you know, online activities. What was the question again?
Do you see the online space as a place where it can potentially remain in the art industry?
Okay, so for myself, I have been using, yes, and I've been using Instagram much more. Like before this, I hardly use it, and I think it's just because I'm not, I'm not meeting anyone physically and anymore, and subconsciously it was a way for me to still, to keep my contact with a lot of people, even though it's indirect through posting a lot more images online.
Do you find yourself connecting more now to your
Yes,
friends?
I think so. In general, compared to before lockdown, and and I mean with the photography that I have been shooting on Instagram, it's it's more loose as well. So prior to this, a lot of project, it's been, it's been very focused, right? Let's say Saturn Sunset, it's on this 1997 economic crisis.
Yeah.
Convenient Sunset is on
Yeah.
Monopoly Company, or Dream Properties on the current real estate. So with right now, I'm just been exploring and shooting a lot of things that I might be interested in,
And
or
and
yeah.
also when you mention about communication, one thing that I noticed that stands out very strongly is in your work is your publications. I mean, it's not very common for a photographer to be making zines and making publication with every new body of work. And in some instances, I also noticed that actually the book became the main form of a communication, a main way of channel for you to channel some of your observations around through this book form. Perhaps you could share a bit what gets you started on this making of zines, and like that we also have, like, thank you for the donation copies that is made to Dex Library. And I mean, and observing what you have been doing over years is truly incredible, because I believe that coming from Thailand, I think you are truly one photographer who see works appearing in both exhibitions, but a lot also more on publications.
For me, books. I love books. Books are an important part of my practice, and especially at the beginning of my career, because after my when I started after my graduation, um, perhaps not a lot of people know about my work or know about myself, and books became uh, a great tools for me to you know to spread my work to curators or viewer, whoever that's interested. And I think that's with it's the same with a lot of people, that the production of book compared to exhibition, it can be real, it can be really economical. So like my first series of books were Thai politics, which I I printed in at a local printer that university students usually use. So like very basic laser print, and the qualities are always not constant. So sometimes the color is a bit darker or lighter, but it is fine. It's suited with the concept of the political series, where the main thing is to make something quite easy, economical, and it's ready to spread out. So yeah, I mean, books at the start of my career um, was was very important. It's still very important for me. Because I mean, let's say with my recent exhibition in Bangkok, I'm it's I mean, I made a lot of effort into interacting with the exhibition space, but I mean, not everyone is able to see that, Gwen might be busy in Singapore, so or someone else might be busy. They might not be able to come to the show, which lasted only 2 months. But with the exhibition in mind, I always have in mind to create a book for every project that I make. So after the end of the project, I was able to send book to Gwen, to Dex, so they could keep up to date with my work, and I think it's great as well. Once I I have been making books for the last 10 years maybe, so you you could see it as a whole kind of body of work as well. So it's interesting how I started off with a very DIY kind of very DIY punk kind of approach, and then as I get more sort of opportunities, I was able to do explore more with offset prints, and so it's quite nice to see like the how the work developed. Yeah.
And it's when you mentioned about the book, and it brought me so much surprise, because the first series, Thai Politics, review images that, as someone who visited Thailand as a tourist, or this review a lot more deeper than what I know as Thai. Yeah. And yet I also sense this sense of very ironic punch with the depictions of like people who dawned out and took selfie. And you also reflect this age of selfie that arise out like 6-7 years ago. And every book sort of like trace not just only locally but also this phenomena about images and the visual cultures in our life right now. Yeah. So and when I think about it, the Thai politics itself, I always feel like it's almost like a record of what the people think or maybe behaving, that we unconsciously are behaving as such, and maybe 10 years down the road we will look back, I actually did such thing. And it reflect almost like this 10 years of your bookmaking, almost like a 10 years record of what Thai society has been through, yeah, like in 10 years time. But this is some thoughts that comes into my mind when I was looking at your book. Yeah. And Miti, you look very tense.
As I say, I have been out much more since since lockdown. I have been keeping fit every day, so that's why I'm very dark now. Yes.
That's good. I think it's funny how like we actually go out more and we speak to so many
Yeah.
people during lockdown.
In a weird way, it's since lockdown, I was able to go out and about much more.
Yeah.
Yeah. But shall I talk about the reflect on what Gwen just said?
Yes, please.
Yes. So yes, Gwen, I think you're right. It's the Thai politics series. I think for me, it's not only about politics. Politics is only part of it, but it's also, as you say, about the behavior of the social kind of norm of how people use technology as well. And it's also for myself, it's a personal study of how I approach photography. So let's say from the first Thai politics series, I started off walking around the protests, but I was using a black and white Fuji film with a compact camera, so like more like a classic kind of street photographer style, shooting the protester T-shirt, and that was yeah, more than 10 years ago. So that at that time, that was around a period, sort of in between analog and people moving into digital. And for the second politics series, it was just me collecting images of from Facebook group of this early kind of meme of people making this Photoshop image of the former Prime Minister Thaksin, where he was. So he was placed everywhere. But that's the reason I also started to make into books. So actually, the first Thai politics books was from the second series, and it started because the the Facebook group that I was collecting all these images on, one day it just closed down, either from being blocked or from being banned, or the owner, the admin decided to close it down. So from that point, I feel that the internet as an archive, we feel at first that it's quite permanent, but actually it's very it's a very insecure kind of archival complex. So for me, it was important just to save it and to make it into a physical format. Just let's just say, even for our mobile phone, sometimes if we lose our mobile phone and we didn't back up everything on cloud, everything's gone. Compared to if I go back to my grandparents' place, I could still see postcard and films back in 1940s, when they were writing postcard or looking at that pictures of their holiday image, and it's it's still very clear. So I think that's the important part, not to forget that internet itself as an archive is very unstable. So that was sort of how I started with this Thai politics series, and it's also a question about whether, as a photographer, just to record all this social change, political change that has happened in Thailand. Do I need to go out on the street? So, as you say on the Thai politics, for Bangkok Beauty series, it's a Google search image. So I was searching handsome boy of the protest, beautiful girl of the protest. It's all images that's available publicly. So so for me, I was questioning myself, like, so as a photographer, for this kind of situation, maybe I don't need to go out to have a walkabout to collect all these images. I could do it, in this virtual space, and which is where I think we're heading more and more towards to. So that in itself is a questioning about photography as well, because photography it's always been about technology, right? Like, let's say back in the 60s when there was no internet, it was all about the fastness of the Leica camera and the photojournalists.
And later on entering into colors.
Yes, that's right. So now as a photographer, how do we deal with this? It's an interesting question as well. But I think it's, with all this this lockdown and this advance, this super fast advancement in technology. Like 10 years ago, I think that's when the first iPhone came out, right? And it has changed the way we consume images, or how we receive the news information. It's not going to go back to the way we were. We probably hardly read physical newspaper now. I mean, the only people I see reading physical newspaper is, my dad in the morning drinking his coffee and still holding on to his whatever
It's,
papers.
it's also very worrisome, right? When information is so accessible online,
Yeah,
and viewer as a reader, the challenge is to decipher what is real and what is fake on the
yeah,
news. I mean, in the old traditional way, what come out the newspaper, well, putting aside propagandistic article, but at least that's a tangible
mm,
source. But and I guess when it comes to internet, or anyone could put out information, and is question, and the viewer always now has to take on more responsibility and more decisions to decide what to accept the reading, whether it's true authentic sources, or is it real. Yeah. And we don't know, and also the online is so static. You do not know who's reading it across behind the screen,
mm,
like in front of the screen, while your works is on the wall, or on the data, and such. No, but I just some thoughts that comes into about technology, informations, and placement. But I'm not saying that technology is no good. I just say that it plays upon the viewer,
mm,
the reader, with greater responsibility, yeah, than ever, actually,
mm.
to decide. Yeah.
Do I need to unmute first? I'm okay. Okay. Yes, I agree with you, Gwen. Now in these, like, in these kind of days, we receive so much information, and let's just say Twitter or Instagram. Even if you post something, it's in the next second or minutes, it's being superseded by new information. And when I look back at how I present my work, and then I realize that it's been very important for me to have this sort of distance um, in my work. So you could even see it in images. There's the distance between the lens in the pictures, or even through the text. I'm always uh, quite mindful how I write my synopsis and text explaining my work, or the titles of the works. It's tend to be quite grey. So let's say dream property or Thai politics, and then there's an explanation, and there's facts given. But I I think with most of my work, I tend not to dramatize, or well, I hope not anyway. I tend not to dramatize through the usage of, let's say, wide angle lens, or high contrast images, or through text. I tend to keep it quite there's a distance, and there's a not neutrality, but there's that space where hopefully viewer, or people come to read or browse through the book or the images,
Yeah.
can sort of give them ideas, or maybe it will bring out a new conversation. So for me, that's the most important thing. I hope that when people look at my work, it's not going to be about preaching, because I think it's so difficult these days with so much information to just put just one argument on. it's I think it's just too it's not it's too simple, too simplistic, to explain everything in just by just pictures.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's true. I think for your work, there's always this lack of over explanation for the viewers, like you said, this space. And it's important for art, especially when you are trying to not give answers, but also ensure that your audience are constantly asking themselves like questions. But I'm curious, since like for example, Southern Sunset, the work, I guess like people who hasn't read the synopsis wouldn't understand like the perspective or where the work is coming from. And is that your intention for people to take what they have from just the beautiful, very pretty sunsets from them, like that kind of thing?
On sunset, for me, it's I I use the you know the sky, the skyscape, the sunset as a starting point of for people to bring people in. So it's kind of let's say like imagining flight. If you just look at it briefly, you sort of see, oh, that's a beautiful night landscape or something, and then I like to play that kind of process in the image. So at first you can feel that this I see a beautiful sunset, or this is a pleasant image, and I like playing on that part. That's where there's a deeper context or something more sort of sinister, like lurking behind the images. So of course, as a single image, if you see it, it's something like it's non-offensive. But once you see the work as a whole, and if you browse through the book and you see traces or hints of like historical past and the text, and then you could form more ideas of how the work is intended, or for it to be viewed. So I quite like that part of having it quite a kind of light and airy introduction. So that first instance when you look, and then it's down to the viewer to dig deeper into the work. So I think that's with a lot of my photography as well. Like at first this can seem quite banal. Like let's say in Dream Property with the empty room. So in the series room, it just pictures of all this very banal landscape of me looking into the room and outside into the landscape, and then you can notice the sign of plasticky furniture, or that kind of newness. And once you see it as a whole, you can it sort of raises a question of you know um, there's all this places about, and who is it for, and what's how is this affecting the um, the social or the environment of the city, how people live. So yeah.
Okay, wow. Thanks, Miti, for explaining that.
And I could talk a bit about the book as well, and you can
Yeah,
include.
I actually wanted to say also, like, I think the book is very important to the artist's craft, because it isn't like committed to an expensive print that you see in a gallery, and it isn't just something you swipe past on social media, but it slows down the pace of consumption when a viewer is holding it, and it's also so easily for you to share them across across the world, like how you sent some to deck. And I think that's very helpful in a time like this where we are not able to travel, and the books themselves are still able to travel, like, and cross borders. Yeah. So maybe you can share a bit more on, like, a little bit more on the books if you want.
It was just continuing from the last part. Sorry, it's probably a bit jumpy this
Don't
time, but
worry.
yeah, I mean with about when I was talking about the how I like the viewer to have to let the work sink in more, so it's not like a direct um, more like preaching. So let's say for the Dream Property exhibition books, I made an A2 size book, like and it's like a news kind of sheet. So it's not it's not glue. It's not glue. And in the work, in the book itself, I invited a lot of people that I'm interested in, but they're not talking about my work in particular, but it's about the topics that I'm interested in, but I didn't include it directly in the exhibition. So let's say there's a film director who wrote about this experience of going to a sales room of a of a new Bangkok condo. So it's a sort of an awkward kind of funny account, and then there's another architect professor who had a plan on the future living of making a temporary kind of space in the car park. So there's all this sort of knowledge or information that I hope that it could lead on to a further discussion. So for me, that's that's really important in how I hope my work will help create that sort of environment and discussion. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's important because you are aware of what your work means, not just to you as an artist, but also like in face of the larger social environment. And like in Singapore, it's funny because were we recently like the national paper recently published a public poll that stated that artists were the least essential career. Yeah, did you see that? And yeah, so I guess I'm curious to know as an artist observing from Thailand, and having your work be quite important, I would say in shaping the narrative of Thai culture and Thai society. How Where do you see the role of an artist in during times of crisis and like the global pandemic?
Wow, that's a big question.
Yeah, but I actually feel that you have already answered the question.
Yeah, I think of my work is it's a lot of my work. Um, um, it's more on a sort of I look at more on a macro kind of long term perspective. So it's it's already a reflection or something that's that is happening while I'm working, but maybe it's I don't think it's going to create any sudden kind of sudden wave of response, and for me that's okay because let's if we go back to the technological aspect and the internet aspect, how let's say about Instagram, everything is so fast. Like I can post images and, it might not even be discussed because, it will be pushed down so fast, right? Or even a Twitter post or something. So in that sense, like this whole tie into this technological aspect as well. I mean, I think it's even more important that the aspect of bookmaking or even exhibition. I think it's still play an important role because with internet sometimes there's we get so much information that okay I might get like some really important reading that some link from you or from Gwen, but then while I'm reading, I might get like a WhatsApp text or something that's gonna distract me.
Yeah.
But with the creation of with a book, there's it's that physical sense, and I could allow people to interpret even through the smell of the book, which I have done in the past, or the texture, the quality of the paper of the book. So for me, all this slower process, more critical way of thinking, I think it would still be it would still be it would still be developed in a physical format, such as a photography festival or exhibition or books. I'm not sure if that's answer your question directly, but
it's helpful. Well, thank you so much, Miti.
I think what you have said about like exhibition, publications, and even content, I believe that others in times to come become part of our own heritage or even culture to come. And I feel that what you have shared earlier on, how your work bring the people into deeper understanding about the world they are living, is already a very big important part here in this pandemic. Because aside from, of course, battering this terrible virus, we are trying to make sense of us ourselves living in this world, what we mean. And I think that the artist's work and the perspective bring forth actually bring us in one step forwards in of what the reality as well, what we are looking forward to the future. Yeah. So I and maybe because we have also spoken about this questions to many artists, and one of the some artists feel that there's no need to try to justify whether artists matters or not, because ultimately time works well, right?
Sorry, can you say again?
I mean, times will tell about
Yes.
what's essential, because history has told us that arts and culture is essential in these civilizations. And look at the arts and cultures that we have received over hundreds of years, thousands of years, and it speaks something about our presence and civilizations of the society and people. And hence it's needless to try to justify the artist's positions in society. Yeah. So anyway, this is coming from a very a comment. Yeah. So yes.
Yeah, this interesting going, right? Honestly, when you think about the artist role. But yes, thank you so much, Miti.
Yes.
Have a great week, Miti. Thank you. See
Take
us.
care. Thank you. Bye bye.